Welcome to The Lost Signals Discusses Film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Ramosi Thurlow scale,
or MONS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Lost Signals Reviews, Film and Television. Today we are doing Chloe Zhao. Zhao, is that correct? Yes. Nomadland, which just released today when we're recording it on Hulu, but it's also out in theaters. I'm Jonathan Ian Manzer, here with Stephen Ramosi.
How you doing?
Christopher Morgan.
And I'm a wanderer.
And Joe Soria.
I use the big bucket.
But
You need the big
and
bucket.
wide or just the big and small?
My knees.
7 gallons.
7 gallons. Yeah.
7 gallons.
Yeah, I was gonna say when we redid our bathroom, turns out they had a
The
7-gallon toilet. Changed my fucking life. So
I heard you have a fart hole. So it's really good. just for fart.
Deep pull.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, you have a log line for us?
Yeah. I have an intimate portrait of a constant wanderer with intimacy issues.
Hey,
Very specific.
more
like
highbrow
that.
than our usual log lines.
Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
It was short. It was shorter, and then I was like, I shouldn't just double up the intimacy. I want the constant is in there for sure. So
Mhm.
it's missing.
Stephen, would you like to tell us about the plot of Nomadland?
Absolutely. It's a pretty simple plot. Really, it's Frances McDormand playing Fern is kind of an untethered spirit after she loses her husband and loses her job, and her town gets de-zip coded, as they say right in the beginning of the movie. She kind of just takes off in her van and goes to several different places across the country, kind of, making friends, seeing them, like becoming part of a nomadic society, I guess, like of these people that kind of just travel around looking for work and looking for companionship. And then she kind of, inevitably goes off to somewhere else and continues on doing the same thing, looking for work, working, people come in and out of her life. It's pretty much it. It's a lot of vignettes. It's very the narrative structure is not super regular, I guess is the way to say it. And it really like just has these moments of her humanity, these moments of her experience, more so than a real through line of narrative. And that's pretty much it. I really enjoy this. I think that I have to take off points for like narrative and plot because it's just not a very the through line isn't really there. I guess the through line is there, but like the normal elements of plot and structure of plot aren't there. I really enjoy this movie, but it more so than anything else, I think, is like just a series of vignettes about her life, rather than a standard story plot. So I'm looking at like a 1 right now on this, maybe a 2, maybe a soft 2. This is going to be like, not through any fault of the movie, but just the way that it's set up, my weakest point of this, I think. So what do you guys think?
I would almost agree with the 1, except for one section. But before I get into that, I want to talk about this is almost shot or stylized as a kind of dispassionate documentary. Almost, I got a kind of a feel of it's non-judgmental. A lot of kind of seems shots that aren't intimate. They're just kind of observing her life. I would say that there are narrative through lines with people that she keeps coming across, particularly Frank. And even though that is, because that's a moral choice at the end of her joining one family and giving up on a nomadic life, or and she makes a choice. So there is kind of a very loose narrative structure there, which is what I'm arguing for the two, because it is almost pure vignettes, as you said.
Yeah, I think I was, you said vignettes. I was thinking more like fleeting moments, because the vignettes to me means that each segment almost has an ending. They don't. So to me, a vignette means like there's a start and a finish. At least you have like a sketch, right? And it ends. Most of the moments here are just kind of transient, and I think it actually leans into representation of the entire film and the theme. It's a movie that feels that it's in flux and there is no basis, and the only thing that you get to see the basis is that, Fern's face is front and center, and she's moving around, and she just keeps moving, and she's trying to, avoid things. I don't want to go too far into themes, but I do think that the theme is the plot here, and that's what drives it, and that's what drives the character. I was leaning also towards a one, but I really actually, even though I didn't love it, I appreciated how it ended too, where it didn't cave and just like say, okay, I'm going to be happy or something. Or
But she's gonna end up with Dave or
it's
whatever.
yeah, it's happy, and I'm going to stay indoors. Like she's chosen this life, and not everyone can be happy. Not everyone can just get over it. And I think we're in a period right now where this is not alone. This is very representative of current period when it comes to the situation that's represented in the movie, but also, the current world situation. So for that reason and that finality, I'm going to go for the two, because it's not like there's no dialogue and no story and no characters and no build up and no people that get recurred to and repeated and the Amazon stuff and everything else. So for that, I'm going to give it a two.
This is hard because I agree with you all. But again, this to me, in a way, comes from. I agree with you. It is, Ian. I believe it's what you said is more of a documentary style. It's got that cinema verite kind of thing without being overly stylized. But this thing also does, away from themes, touches on a bunch of stuff that I love. I love character studies. I love slice of life films. I love road movies. And I like things that aren't contrived. And this could have very easily, when she went to Dave's family's house, fall into the area of contrivance. And I don't think it ever did. I think it's I know there's a lot of overlap by themes. And when we get to themes, it's probably, as we go along, it's probably going to be harder for me to justify my bias, but the fact of the matter is it held my attention the entire time. I did feel the strong narrative pull on it because it is one of these things where it is a character study. It is very, very character driven in that it is Frances McDormand's show and a lot of people are fleeting. So I am going to, biasly or not, give this a 3. I mean, I loved it. So
Sorry, E, go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
Oh no, I was go ahead.
I think that I agree. There is enough of the
narrative thread,
recurrence. I guess there is enough recurrence in this, and I think that's that's going to go into themes a little bit as well. But like, there's enough of that to see a little bit more of a plot, I guess, than maybe I was initially giving it credit for. So I will agree with you guys. I'll give it a 2 for plot.
All right, on to themes with me. I want to begin by saying that, intentionally or not, I think this is one of the best explorations of depression I've ever seen. I actually think it rang very, very true to what it's like to be, one, isolate yourself, but avoiding people who are trying to help you. And I don't know if that was the intention of it, but it rung incredibly true to me. But however, I want to talk about the idea of the rugged individualism of this nomadic community, and in the sense that they think that they are it's an illusion of individuality where they are constantly require um, uh, the input of other social groups, whether it be the when she's initially becomes the nomad, she has to learn the skills in order to survive as that. When something goes wrong, she has to contact friends and then family for money, and then she's fleeing the structure but maintaining a different structure. However, what I did really like were the explorations of other types of family, kind of showing the hollowness of individualism and the uniqueness of the definition of family. That you had kind of the modern family with, is it Dave?
Dave, yeah.
He's such a
Yeah.
generic name that he's the grandfather living with the kids. There's a huge family there that's non-traditional of just the mother, father, child thing, where Fern is welcomed in. They have the most traditional family is her sister, and that kind of suburban style. But throughout this is her trying to escape and become individualistic, but how much she is also relying on others. So I actually thought it was a very interesting exploration, and kind of I never thought it was glorifying or pandering. And she's called out on her hypocrisy by a number of different characters throughout this. And I thought it was an interesting exploration into this lifestyle, but overall also I think into this kind of illusion that America has of itself.
I think it's really fascinating. You mentioned you're right. Like she does get called out for her hypocrisy, and at the same time, she calls people out like for their hypocrisy, especially in the when she goes to visit her sister in like the coven of real estate agents. But like, um, there really is this like feeling from this movie that a just from the point of view of the writer and director, who are both Chloe Zhao, of like this interest in exploring without judging the people, and just a small history of the small amount of history that I know about her. She is from China. I think she moved here when she was in her, I forget what age, but like after her formative younger years, and before she was out of high school, I believe. So she has, in a couple of interviews that I read, like said, like I was really interested in like American pop culture until I moved here, and then I became interested in like politics and the way that people kind of are in this country, and like really exploring the way they are in this country is interesting. I think that to get the this view of it from like this outsider to at least until she came and became a citizen, or I don't even actually know if she's a citizen or not, but like until she came and like lived here, to get this view of like, all right, I started off like viewing Americans as this, and I now am trying to like figure out what Americans are. And like you can get that from this movie. It's like, all right, I want to explore like what people are that live here in this place, and like move like, these specific people that are moving around or whatever. You can really see that as part of like what's going on in this film. It's like you as the viewer are at the same time as the movie trying to figure out who Fern is, and like what her motivations are, and you really aren't allowed to know exactly. Like you just like, all right, you can make your best guess, but it's not like the movie doesn't tell you shit, like doesn't fucking feed it to you. The movie shows you what happens, the way she acts, and you're supposed to figure out who you think she is based on that. and that's what I really enjoyed about it and loved about it. So, this is maybe like tangential, not tangential, but like maybe not all themes that I'm talking about, but I think it's important to like what you take away from this movie. And I think that the theme of that is very strong outside of like all the stuff that you were talking about, Ian. This is more of like the personal one, as opposed to like the bigger themes that happen in this movie to of like, the not the depression of like 2008 or whatever, and like how that affected the country going forward. The town that you lived in went out of business basically in 2011, but that's based off of what happened in this country in the Great Recession. So like, there's all that. There's all the so much about grief and loss in this that is shown on, I love Frances McDormand as an actor, and you see all that on her face and like in her slight actions. She never breaks down. She never has that moment where you get to like see really what she's thinking, but you can see it behind everything that goes on in this movie. And I think this is a movie that's very strongly about that as well. And I could probably go on a little bit more, but I'm going to shut up now and let everybody else talk.
Chris, why don't you go? Because I feel like I always list out about 300 things, and then someone else on theme has to be like, you stole all my thunder. So I'd like you to enjoy, if you don't mind.
I appreciate that.
I was saying to Chris to go ahead before I do it, unless Chris, he has anything.
This is very complicated because there are, I think, as Ian and Steve point out, there's a lot of this is an intersection of a lot of themes. There's one gripe that Beth always has with post-apocalyptic movies is that there's this artifice of like extreme antagonism where there is a general human propensity for, taking care of one another. And this definitely has that, where people are looking out for each other, people who've chosen this life. I think it is a great exploration of the wonders of and all that is good and like say socialism, because there is a lot of sharing and a lot of caring and a lot of, what I'd consider, which would be that, you want to create kind of like an even footing for everybody to succeed or fail based upon, an even ground where everybody does what they need to do to survive. And I believe that this also shows like, well, the fallacies of capitalism and the necessity for self-reliance and determination, but also being able to allow other people into your life, whether it is spiritually, whether it is just with regard to camaraderie, whether it is regard to being able to live in this world where, oh shit, your car broke down, here's 2,300, and you might be better off spending another, to the 2,700 to get an actual car, but there's an attachment because there's an investment into her van where she did a lot of modifications to it and made it her own. So it's not even just a sentimental thing. It is a practical thing because, well, she'd have to spend $5,000 and then redo all this stuff. I remember seeing Into the Wild, which I liked. But this movie points out a lot of the fallacies of that film and that character, where he came from a rich thing and decided to throw it all away and go on this vision quest, for lack of a better word. And here's some people who have chosen this life, but also understands the reality of the socioeconomic system that has been inflicted upon us. They are understanding of how because of our system, towns can die, but and how to live, but they also have reverence for the land and for everything that is beautiful in our country, aesthetically. I think this touches on a lot of things, but the human aspect of it, the humanity, the quintessential good in people, which we don't see a lot of anymore, in a lot of things. In this, especially when you have like nomadic films or post-apocalyptic films, anything where you're kind of removed from society, because we're very societal, modern society centric area. So the fact this thing came out of Hollywood kind of surprises the shit out of me. So I'm definitely giving it a 1.
May I just comment that this is not a post-apocalyptic, but it's a post-capital.
Yeah,
It's a what what?
post-capital, capitalistic.
Oh yeah, post-capitalistic. Yeah, but in a lot of ways, post-apocalyptic is the post-capitalistic. It's societal breakdown, and these are people who've rejected their rejected modern society. But there's no sanctimony like you got into something out of the character from Into the Wild. There is like, hey, we've chosen this life, and we are going to accept it for all the pitfalls and the highs and lows that it is. And yeah, there's some fallacies to it because Frances McDormand's character Fern really is reliant on a lot of people who live in the non-nomadic world. But you know, this is her first year as a nomad, so there's a lot of pitfalls. It's a very complicated film, and there's a lot of nuance to it, and I'm giving this a very, very strong one.
A lot of ins, a lot of outs.
A lot of what have yous. You know, it starts right from the beginning. I think it's actually, everyone said a little nuance. I think it's actually pretty bludgeoned right from go. You know, the pre-card talks about the city and how it's gone and the zip code is gone. It's literally called Empire. The Empire has fallen. The people are left to handle it, right? And what do we get? We see Amazon. Like, I mean, you know, there it is. That's the story, all done, right? The new empire is the inside of that building where people are working 3 months out of the year and then expected to be able to buy stuff for the other 9 months of the year with that 3 months of money, and live on it while you get paid well, and everyone's celebrating, and they're celebrating safety maneuvers. You know, it made me, you know, it was a flashback moment for me because I was literally in an Amazon warehouse exactly a year ago today, on a tour for something that I was doing. And I was just like, that is exactly what it's like, except now there's less people and more robots, pretty much. So even more onto the post.
Still a lot of people though.
Yeah, there's more robots, especially on the floor. They show them in there. Everything else, if they don't show it, you're not allowed to film the robots there. I won't even get into what we were able to do to get into the warehouse. But you know, that I think is actually pretty, it's not nuanced at all. It's very aggressive in that case. The nuance here is in the performance and in the education of her once the driving factor. You know, most of the impetus of the story here happens before the movie even starts, which is very rare. Like the inciting incident, which is usually in that early part, happens in the title sequence, basically. So, you know, just some of the themes that I would lean on here that we kind of touched on, but just to solidify, you know, loss, definitely, depression, searching, finding a community, whether it's family or emotional connection, survive versus thrive, right? Some of these people are surviving, some of them are thriving in this and really enjoy it. You know, it's a battle and it can be a tug of war, economic instability, obviously. You know, connection, which I mentioned in the early moment, but you know, the intimacy issues, basically after loss, too. The ability to still be, you know, loneliness and kindness. Like even though she's having these issues, she still reaches out with what she can and gives, right? With her little things that she has, she gives. And then a few more: fear of settling down and fear of intimacy. And then the last one I would go to is, you know, that's just, you know, Godsmack said it best that I stand alone. She is a hard-headed person, and people are trying to help her, and that's the thing. A lot of these people don't want to be talked down to, like, I'm going to help you. They don't want charity. They want to do this themselves. She says it. I need work. I like work. She's in the meeting, and Amazon gives these people work when they need them, and then when they don't need them, it's seasonal, and that's the current. That to me is the ultimate theme. The just the end of commercialism, or the over commercialism, where the throwing out and everything is, like her van, she doesn't want to get rid of it. She wants to repurpose it as much as possible, because she feels that it has a purpose. When you get rid of something, you're replacing it. And these people, we're not replaceable. We are the world, and we're not, the Rust Belt. We're not flyover country. We are still people, even though you've left us. So
There's an
there you go.
thing, Joe, where one of her treasures is plates given to her by her father.
Right.
Her father, those aren't family heirlooms.
Right.
He picked them up at
Garage sale or something type thing. Yeah.
And it's, in a sense, the repurposing of other treasures in order to create new family, or starting over, in a sense of.
And when it's smashed, she actually puts it back together. I was like, that is the prototype. Everything, that piece of cardboard, everything is, she doesn't waste anything, and they have the free area. It's a different way. And I don't think most of us, deal with it and have to deal with, they don't get to choose this. Most of these people, they're pushed into it and have to embrace it or suffer from it. And that's the decision that these people have to deal with. So.
Well, I want to talk, I'm going to be Debbie Downer for a second, because that's who I am at my heart. I was doing some research the other day, actually totally accidental to this movie. Perhaps hearing about this movie coming out spurred my thoughts, like subconsciously. But USA Today came out. 1 in 500 people in the U.S. are homeless or nomadic. That's a ridiculous amount of people. But like, there's this one, they're interviewing a couple who they're 30 years old. They lived out of a Cadillac. Their granddaughter was living with, their daughter was living with their parents. This is the thing, is that this movie did portray it as choice almost. Like a number of characters made this choice. In reality, it's not a choice for many people. And in fact, back during the height of COVID, really when it first hit, and real unemployment went up to like 22%. I had a lot of friends who lost jobs. I had friends living out of cars because they were losing their apartments. I had friends who moved back in with their parents. A lot of, and a lot of people were looking, like proud people were like, "Hey, can anyone give me money, because like I needed to live," especially with our debt society. So I was looking into the eviction moratorium, because a lot of people, there's not debt forgiveness, it's not rent forgiveness, it's delayed payment. So in certain states, when moratorium's over, they have 1 month to pay back the entire accrual of rent. So predictions are now we're going to go from 1 in 500 people to perhaps 1 in 125, perhaps 1 in 37. The high ends are 40 million people are going to lose their homes. So this might be, this is take place in 2012. This might be a reality for a lot of people in America in the coming year.
What's really
Hoovervilles. Or
I'm sorry, Ian. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, go ahead.
But like, there was this whole tiny house movement, which is these things are kind of expensive, and there's a lot of space efficiency. So I mean, even in like the nomadic life, you still have a class structure. These folks don't have the money to have somebody build them, nor buy a tiny house where they can have, a shower and a blah blah blah. This is a chosen life, but they really have chosen, for lack of a better word, and this is not wholly accurate, to live off the land. Now, as some like about like this is one thing that I fly in the face of a lot of people who I've known who have libertarian, or still do know, that have that economic libertarian tendency, where society is just like, oh yeah, they live under the illusion that everybody has a chance, and they are compassionate to, well, some people are. I know some people who have been economic Darwinists, and I hate that. But the thing is, I try to remind people, especially the people that are couple people, couple of people in my life that have been economic Darwinists. Um, I have to tell them, I'm like, there was a time in my life where I had a $20 bill. And for some reason, I decided to just have I had $21. One was a $20 bill, and I had a single, and I spent the single on a scratch off ticket, just hoping that I could get an extra $25. And I didn't. And I remember being at the end of a bread aisle at ShopRite, and I burst into tears because at this time, if it weren't for the good grace of my mom's friends who said, here, just live in our attic apartment, just pay us when you can, I would have been there. I would have been homeless. And as somebody who's bipolar and at the time was not treated, I've been on Lamictal for about 15, 16, 17 years now. And it like saved my life. So I'm not even getting down the cost of Medicare and having to spend $137 a month until before it became generic. To not choose this life. I mean, even these folks who are not wealthy by any chance, stretch of the imagination, but have chosen this life and are living what they can do based on the society. When we talk about socialism, as Kyle Kalinske said, is the moderate position because we don't live in a capitalist society. We live in an oligarchy. And to somebody who could not live this life, because if you look around my room, I live in a technological terror room. I mean, I've got
You would
things I
have
could
one of
not have
those deluxe
imagined.
RVs that they were selling.
What?
You would have one of the deluxe RVs if you were living on the
Yeah,
road.
there's no way I couldn't afford the deluxe RV. But like as somebody who in 2005, decided I didn't want anything. I didn't want a house. I didn't want a way for pets anymore. And I've got all of those right now. Whose dream was to buy a used Element and to travel across country with the bare minimum and his guitar.
On the bright side, you might have that coming up soon.
Yeah,
I mean, I think this stuff goes back into the pride side. You're right on that, and I think it's also dismissal of older people, right? Everyone, there's no like 15-year-olds out there. There are a couple of the people they run into, and the kind of I don't want to say hippies, but the ones that are selling the art, and but for the most part, the representation is. This is a conclave of people that are desperate to max out what they can of what they're getting. They don't have any other opportunities. There's no one that wants and they want, older people run into, I think, a moment where they have to choose if they want their freedom any longer. And this is obviously even a harder case now, but once they make that choice that they're giving up their freedom, they're living with their family, and then they end up getting pushed somewhere else, that's it. There's no more choices. The choices end, and the choices become, jello or pudding. And I don't think I don't think Frances McDormand was looking to go, to do that. She was looking to stay fiercely independent, and it doesn't necessarily, just because you stay independent doesn't mean you pay off, and you still need others. You can't live alone, be independent, and then expect to also be helped, right? So it's communal, but with your own fierce individuality. Not to step on you too much there, Chris. Sorry.
No.
Chris, I'm going to allow you to talk more about antagonists. That's ones all around for themes, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
The antagonist is one of these things that's kind of nebulous because the funny thing is I am going into this and saying we live in a fucked up system. We live in an oligarchical system. I mean, we do, as Joe said, you have somebody like Jeff Bezos, telling it's like, hey, for 3 months of the year, you can have a great salary, which, as we all know, is not. Otherwise, there wouldn't be unions working, coming up all the time, which I wholeheartedly support.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, so it's one of these weird things because systemically, Frances McDormand did not want to live in Empire, but her husband loved it. And they had a small house, but the landscape behind it was gorgeous. but she appreciated what she had, even though they weren't wealthy. When that was taken away from her, she kind of rebuilt it in a way, in a mobile thing where she could stay close to the land and have that minimalistic life, but it was mobile. She lost, there was that grief aspect of it. So there's grief that plays into it. There's this fucked up system of ours. So she did and did not choose her life, but she uh at the end she chose the life. At the end, without question, she chose the life, but she was with a lot of people who actually did, for one reason or another, choose that life. So this is one of these things where I really want to say I give it a 1 because of our fucked up system, but because it there's so many people in here who chose it, and at the end she chose it. She had offers to live other places where she could have gotten a job and lived the quote unquote American dream. um I'm not really sure where to come on this, because I again, as somebody who was crying at the end of a bread aisle, wondering if you should get tuna and bread or peanut butter and bread, which is what would go farther. I
Peanut butter.
am I feel bad about saying that they chose this, but by the same token, I'm not really sure how much the economy played into it for the community as a whole. So I'm going to pass this off to you, because on the one hand, I want to give it a 1, but on the other hand, I'm not really sure if I should give it a 1 or if that's my bias. So I'm going to hand this off. I'm going to cop out on this one.
Yeah, I was gonna
Interesting.
say.
I mean, I'll go. I think that Frances McDormand's antagonism comes down to um, herself. Like she's her own antagonist in this movie. She really has chosen a specific life. According to her sister, she has always chosen this type of life. She's the outsider. She doesn't want to follow the same rule, that's I'm not judging her one way or another on that, but like she is the one who puts herself into the situations that she's in a lot of times. And I'm not saying that bad things didn't happen, or obviously, or the death of her husband, whatever, but um the societal factors don't really feel like her antagonists in this movie. um it feels like she's trying to get away from them, right? Like, but she isn't like chased by them. And she's not like she goes across the country because she wants to. She goes to all these places because she wants to be out there. She wants to be doing something new. She doesn't want something stable or something that's the same all the time.
She wants stability, but on her terms.
Like, that's the thing. Like, I'm not sure she does. I think that every time
She's had an empire with her husband for a while.
Yeah, but you don't see that, right? Like, in terms of this movie, in terms of what we see of her, she doesn't want stability anymore at this point. She wants to go out, explore new things. She wants to do the things that she didn't do when she was with her husband. And I think she, to a degree, has this like immeasurable grief over her husband's death, but also B, has this feeling of like, I can do what I wanted to do when I was tied down before and I couldn't do it then. So now I can go walk. Like the last scene of the movie, she goes and walks from her old house through the gate out into the desert, right? And like, I think that's what she's kind of doing throughout the entire movie, is like going and exploring the things that she wanted to do when she was looking out at the desert out of her back window all those years that she lived there, and she never actually just walked out and did that, right? Which is why she doesn't want to be tied down by Dave, even though she clearly likes him. He is obviously way more into her and wants the stability, where she's not ready for that. After, like, she refuses to take off the ring from her husband, and like she says that it's because, or they imply that it's because she'll never like it's a circle that never ends or whatever they say, and like, but whatever. I think really she uses it as a shield to protect herself from other people, specifically like Dave in this situation. She doesn't want to allow herself to get involved with him, so she keeps her husband like front and center in her mind, doesn't allow herself to really get super involved with him. And all that. Like, that is to say, like, I don't know if there's a super strong antagonist in this movie. I don't think it needs a super strong antagonist. She feels, and like I said, and when I first started this, if anything, to me, she's antagonizing herself more than anything else, and that might be my one. If you guys think that that's an interesting way to pursue things, but like, other than that, I don't know if there's a strong one. So go ahead.
Actually, you kind of convinced me on that. I have a friend. We're all from Jersey here. I have a friend who went to high school with, went to college with. Is on a farm in Virginia right now, and has a personality that's exactly like Fern. And yeah, he has a lot of troubles in his life, but those are all his, born out of stubbornness and the desire to have his things. I care for him quite a bit, but the minute you start caring for him, he gets very hostile.
Sure.
So you're right. As much as I would like to lay it at the hands of the RV owners, the massive yacht owners, and the Amazon warehouse slave masters, I think it's her stubbornness, and I don't know if that is. I might have to give this a soft 0.
Yeah, I was gonna. I mean, isn't it obvious who the villain is here? It's Santa Claus, right? I mean, Santa Claus is the only light source for her. It's the guy who's telling all these people to move out in the middle of nowhere, and it's going to be great. And Santa Claus is what runs Amazon. So all of these things, it's obvious, and Santa Claus is evil. But kind of true. But honestly, we've circled around it. It's the villain is the crush of capitalism and Amazon, right? Amazon is the villain of her life, right? And of all these people, it is the villain of the story. It's the giver that's not really giving. It's giving enough to just keep you around, but it's like someone getting a little piece, just enough to survive, but not to thrive. And I mentioned that in the themes, but I know we're talking about Frances McDormand and herself being the antagonist. I think that could always be the case of every character. So I try to avoid that one, just because everyone, it's the push and pull of their decision. It's similar to the other movie that Chloe Zhao. I think she has this theme. The Rider, which I believe you said no one else said they saw, is about a guy who, if he gets hurt one more time as a rider, he's gonna die, and he can't stay off the horse. That's pretty much the movie. And he's stuck in this urban area, has nothing else he knows how to do, and they're just saying, stay off, do something else, and he's persistent. And it's natural, it's another naturalistic story. We haven't talked about the other performances, I'm sure it'll come up, but this movie is a naturalism, short little pieces movie. And the repetitions are the importance. And to me, the repetition of those opening scene of the Amazon, of the abandoned city, of those precursors, make that the villain. And I always have a problem giving that a 1. To me, that's just saying the world is the enemy. And so I'm going to go on the 0 too, while saying that it is valid. It's just not, to me, not a real antagonist. So on that principle, it's a 0. But on the strength of that part of it being a villain, I would be happy to say that.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the 0 as well. A softer 0, but yeah.
Yeah. Who's up next, or what do we have? Protagonist? That's me? All right. So I already...
Steve, give it a 1 or a 0.
Steve, 1 or 0?
Me? 0.
Okay. I was waiting on you to give your score. Sorry.
Sorry.
Joe,
Yeah. No one convinced me to give it a 1, considering everyone else gave it a
So
0.
is everybody giving a 0 then?
Yeah. 0's all around on antagonist.
Joe, protagonist.
All right, protagonist is so we have Frances McDormand. She's cranky. That's a 1. That's it. I mean, and her name is Fern, even though she's Fran, and we're not really getting into names. But this movie is centered on her face. Someone else mentioned her, it like being the frustration of her face, but it's about those moments where she's excited to be alive that you're waiting for. And it's the orneriness and that gives it that naturalism and her really like seeming appreciation of everything and everyone there with her. All these people, you can see all these secondary, many of them are not real actors, yet she seems to interact with them just like they're equals with her. You don't see her at any moment looking down on them. She's helping them, and she rising tides this whole movie as a performer, even if she doesn't as a character necessarily. So for that alone, Frances McDormand is in my favorite movie of all time. She's probably one of my 5 favorite actors of all time. I wouldn't say this is my most enjoyable version of her performances or one that I would revisit, in an enjoyable fashion. Give me an Almost Famous Mom, give me a Fargo, give me, even a Burn After Reading, 3 Billboards. But she's very strong, and she's the point of this movie. So there's really, if it wasn't for her, this movie is probably in trouble. You need a strong center presence in this movie, and so strong 1.
I agree with everything you said. I'm giving it a 1 as well. Chris, Steven?
Maybe this is my 51-year-old age. Maybe it's because I've said to everybody that I feel like my life began at 34, but I feel like this is a coming of age movie for a middle-aged person. I mean, really. Because she's discovering things about herself or rediscovering things about herself. And I didn't travel across country before I was 35, bringing a friend of mine to Portland. I mean, from the Mississippi on, I cried at everything. The Bighorn Mountains, I couldn't wrap my brain around what I was seeing. And I understand that the fact that this woman by circumstance, chose to do this life, but then embraced it. In a lot of ways, I feel like this is a coming of age movie. And I think Frances McDormand knocked it out of the park as a performance. But I mean, as a character study, this is a coming of age film to show that you're never too old to begin your life again. I mean, especially there's people here there was one woman here who had terminal illness, and she's like, as she said, I'm not going to die with my sailboat that I've never sailed at in my driveway. I'm going to go back up to Alaska, and I'm going to see the swallows.
Get in my van and go.
I don't know if this is camper, whatever, but however the song is, but I'm going to give her 1.
Yeah, strong 1. Great performance by Frances McDormand, and it's just a strong character. I'm going to give it a 1 as well.
Well, 1's all around. Steve will keep talking. Supporting characters, I thought were really strong. You have a bunch of people who aren't really actors, acting as themselves, who actually live this life, and I thought they were all portrayed really well. But specifically, you've got Dave, played by
David
Stratham, and this dude is awesome. I really knew him from The Expanse, but I think he is I like him as an actor, and I thought he did good in this movie. I thought he did a good job in this movie. Other than that, there's not a lot that happens to the supporting characters. There's not a ton of there's no arcs that happen to the supporting characters there, because the idea of this movie is that Fern is a nomad. She doesn't really keep people in her life, other than I think Dave is the one that's in her life the most, and his big arc is that he finds out he's a grandfather and then goes live with his son, which is something. It's not nothing, but it's not like this crazy strong arc. That said, I like what they do with the other characters in the movie, and I think this movie is nothing without the supporting characters. And I think that's my biggest takeaway is like Frances McDormand is great as Fern, but this movie is about the um, fleeting interactions that you have, especially in a life like this, with other people, and how they recur in your life. And you know, they specifically say this out loud. Like they very much make that an important part of the movie. Um, and I think that it's done well. So I got to give the supporting characters a 1, just because I think that the supporting characters are kind of the point of the film,
Hmm.
or a lot of the point of the film. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I agree. The other character that really comes to mind to me is the young man. She meets. They trade letters back and
Derek.
forth. But again, it's all about that recursion that's occurring. That's
Mm.
almost something that one. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, just to refer kind of back to what Steve was talking about, there's, that last scene where she meets with Santa. I'm not gonna remember his name, so I'm just gonna call him Santa. But has that real poignant moment that I think points out the whole thing that it's, one of the most things he loves about this life is that there's no final goodbye, and that he's met people and he never says goodbye. He just says, "I'll see you down the road."
See that?
And this movie, the supporting characters do exactly what they're supposed to do in a really, I was leaning, I didn't love this movie, and now more I think about it, you really, they do a great job even with these non-professional actors of showing the paths of where she could be going. Right, she's new to this life. Everyone else here is experienced. You've got the teacher that's living it. You've got the woman who has some straight true issues and has but wouldn't give it up for anything. You've got the young people who are kind of really still figuring it out, but dire straits. And then you have Dave, who is the opposite of Fern. Even though they say that Fern had this streak in her before, she did settle down. It appears the way they didn't give him too much of it, but it appears that Dave did not settle down. And his son, when he comes in the movie, says, he wasn't, basically said, I wasn't there for him. Now he kind of decides that he has a grandson and he has a family unit. He wants to be there, and he's gone the other way. People don't have to change, but there's a softening and it can happen, and there is opportunity. So just like I think Chris mentioned about how maybe, or everyone was said that it's not, they're not, she's her own worst enemy. She's being hard-headed. She's also brand new to this. All these other people that are making these decisions, you get this feeling they're lived into these characters. She's trying to get that first bite of it. I did want to point out, actually, interestingly, Dave's son, who is David Strather's son, who is in the band Dawes and is also in Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah. I actually seen him play. The Dawes is like a kind of a country alt rock band. They're pretty good, but that if you look at his IMDb, he's also listed as an actor. He's in a lot of David Strathairn's movies as his son. Even my personal favorite, I love David Strathairn, so I'm going to give a little moment to him because he's been in my pantheon of underappreciated actors for a long time. He's had a few good moments. I've never watched The Expanse. I do know that people like that. I'm not a sci-fi guy, but give me 8 Men Out every day of the week. It's my favorite baseball movie. It is the movie about the Black Sox, and it's the best portrayal of baseball in a movie. It's the best scandalized thing version of a movie, and then I believe his son is actually in it as his young son, which is very good. So not my favorite Strathairn, but he's passable and he does deserve a point. I also think he leads there. The reason, some I could keep going, but his son's name I think is like Tay, and yeah, I mean, yeah, there you go. That's it. I'll stop there.
David Strathairn, if you want to see him, pick pretty much any John Sayles movie.
Yep.
He is a regular there. My favorite film of his is Limbo. So
Yep.
if anybody's watching this and is curious to see Limbo, write somebody. It's hard. We can't get it right now. We often talk about on the show the strengths of supporting characters. Are there anybody who gives us, is there anybody we like who gives an impression? Or like one of the things I always go back to, if this is a character study, do these supporting characters support the person whose story it is? This is amazing because every character has their own story and they're very well developed, even if we see them in one scene. Yeah, these are non-actors like talking about their lives, but that does not, I think it was Steve who said, without the supporting characters, there wouldn't be really a story to this. So they do more than support her. They flesh out a world, and they are valuable. Because when oh fuck, the woman who went to Alaska,
Swinky. I wanted to name them too. Yeah,
yeah,
Swinky is her name.
when she said she wanted rock, Swanky,
Swanky.
when she died, she wanted rocks thrown in the fire. So when it turns out that they were on, like when she sent Frances McDormand the video of the swallows, it really affected me. When I saw when they threw her the rocks in to memorialize her, I mean, I started crying. It's granted, it's not a very hard thing to do these days, especially in winter, especially in February.
What's wrong with February? I love February.
You February babies.
February and January are two of the most miserable months.
Yeah.
But I thought these were really extremely well-rounded characters. But as somebody, I was in California for 4 months, and there was a person there that worked in the post-production house my cousin worked at, where I would basically did an unofficial internship at. I was new to LA, and he invited me to a party, and he introduced me around. And it's just, and traveling across country, and actually going into Wyoming at like 6:00 in the morning to this random diner, and having that stereotypical thing where everybody just looks up from their papers or cigarettes or whatever and goes morning and goes back to it. And the stories that you have when you're fleeting, and somebody from New Jersey, going across country, and everybody's like, "You're from New Jersey?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're not the Jersey Shore and the Sopranos. We're actually people of substance." And you can tell.
I stopped at a place in Nebraska, and the guy said to me, your accent's funny. Where are you from? I'm from New Jersey. He's like, "Oh, that's where 9/11 happened." Something forget, but we'll never forget. I'm like,
never forget.
We'll never forget. Yeah, I didn't have any 9/11. I had nobody invoking 9/11, but we went across country, and there are people that you tell each other your stories in a very fleeting thing, and it's impactful. Like I said, there's a lot of things I remember from the minor drama that was going on in Western Wisconsin, which, by the way, if you get out of Wisconsin, is a gorgeous state when you get away from the metropolis. And it's just like we spent a little time in this convenience store, and it's just amazing to see slices of people's lives. And this was kind of like the nomadic version of that. I mean, this is real shit. I mean, so I'm giving it a very strong one.
I kind of feel that you're about to buy a van.
Chris is not going to be on our podcast anymore.
Beth's been looking at vans all afternoon.
You know, if they say "bless your heart," they're not doing nice things to you, right? Just making sure, Chris.
Who?
Well, bless your heart means, is Southern FU.
Oh, is it really? Oh, which is funny. My grandma was from Oklahoma, and she used to say "bless your heart" all the time.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's telling you to, if you hear that at the convenience store, that's Southern charm.
Right, well, nobody said "bless your heart" to us.
I've had that said to me in Florida. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. So I don't really know what that means now. Maybe my grandma hated me. I don't know.
Maybe not. Maybe I would say your grandma is a nice part, but I can tell you if it's someone random, probably
an Okie, so
you can take it whatever you like. And we did not mention one character, but that was from the beginning to the end. But I do think Linda May, who was the entry into Amazon and the jobs and everything else, was also very, very strong and very well formed, and kind of set the path for all the other people that got to kind of drift in the movie. She gave you this kind of sassy grandma vibe that was the real passionate and champion of the whole maneuver. So I don't know what her real name is either, but I thought she
Also Linda May, actually.
Linda May. Oh, okay. So there you go.
Linda May playing Linda May.
Well, I'm going to go into dialogue. It's once for everyone, I believe. You're either going to like this or you're going to hate this. It's very much like what we talked about supporting. This is very kind of naturalistic dialogue, very. There are some good emotional beats Frances McDormand to portray, but overall, I like this slice of life stuff. So it's affecting to me. I could see people, and I've seen reviews online. I believe Scott hates this movie, who's one of our people who reviews with us because it can be viewed as meandering at times and musing at times. So I liked it. I'm going to give it a 1, but I could see where other people wouldn't.
I was just saying, I don't have a ton. I mean, I did write some lines in this compared to some other movies, but I think dialogue wise, it's actually stronger than I thought it would be. These type of naturalistic movies that are very, this is a movie that did well in Cannes and is a very European vibe of a film. This is not an American style movie, even though it's made in America. I think that's what people actually respond to, because it has that, French, not new wave, but more of a French dreamy, I'm not putting my finger on it, but maybe even like Eastern European, you watch like a Romanian film or something. It doesn't seem like if this wasn't in English, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And it wouldn't seem like this is not the America that is usually portrayed in films, right? This is kind of the drifting in the movie you'd see where people are trying to escape on a bus, sometimes, or something into the heartland. But dialogue wise, I think Frances McDormand delivers it well. I think it's actually pretty well written for what it is. There's some really, gut-wrenching lines that are really well done. We discussed the Santa speech, but there's a couple of them that are a little more speechy than I'd like. But it is natural. They let people talk, and I think that's what you get when you have, say, people sitting around a campfire, letting tell their stories. We're doing it right now. Like, you could say, like, a conversation wouldn't be like that, and maybe we're like freezing so we don't overlap each other too much. But generally, when people sit, they'll let them tell their story, right? These people that's what they're doing. Otherwise, they sit in their place and they're all alone. So, it's not the strongest one ever. There's some really strong lines even in that sister scene that we mentioned a little bit. The left a hole by leaving, and that one's on me. There's some really affecting, short, punchy lines as well that are obvious dialogue versus the moments that I think are more of the impromptu, Linda May, sass bombs. So I'm giving it a good level 1 and a surprise. Actually, I was not expecting it to be as strong as it was.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with that. There are some moments of those, like, as you just mentioned, like those like quick little moments, and those hit me harder, I think, than the almost speechifying that happens a couple times where there's like some monologues, which honestly I also really liked. Like, in a sappy way, I enjoyed those. Like, Frances McDormand has probably a couple. There's the one with Linda May, tells a story of the swallows. There's what's the other, like, there's another one that I'm forgetting right now, but like, there's like 3 or 4 monologues that are like just kind of sappy. I enjoyed them, but like I could see how they would be a little bit like a little too saccharine for some people or something like that.
Saccharin's a good word.
But yeah, there are those moments of like, this is like really punchy lines that are like very impactful, and they pack a lot of like emotional impact into just a very short moment, like you mentioned, where like the "that's on me" moment with her sister, and like the note that Dave leaves her when he leaves, and it says like, if you come visit, there's more of these, and it's like the rock with holes in it that he introduced her to like earlier. Like, even without the line of dialogue, it's dialogue, right? Like it's characters and dialogue with each other. So Yeah, I think that the dialogue's pretty damn strong, and I'm gonna give it a 1.
I think I made my case for dialogue before my other long-winded thing about the supporting characters. So since I have style, I'll just say I have my 1.
All right, so that's your review for style.
No. That was my review for dialogue.
Goes straight
Everything
to
I have
style.
to say goes into style. Well, number 1, I mean, speaking from experience, I was one of my favorite meals is like fried chicken and mashed potatoes. We were in Idaho at the top of Route 12, and I'm like, oh, it sounds so good. I wonder if the potatoes are fresh. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm in fucking Idaho. Of course they're fresh.
Sure.
The style of this film I loved. I love any other film that would be like this would be somebody who lost their job and would have to um you know, it would be played for comedy or whatever, or a melodramatic purpose. I mean, there'd be a savior film, whether it would have been the city person who came in there and decided to show, acclimate to a small town life and whatever, and kind of elevate those people, in the town to, be an exchange of elevation. It'd be, some kind of savior dynamic one way or another. This wasn't it. This was a lifestyle film. This is a road movie. It's many, many things. Um, and I'm glad this was an honest film and didn't fall into any of those tropes. And just quick mention, I thought the music was great. I thought it was understated and it did exactly what it needed to when it needed to do. So I remember, as I said before, being in Wyoming and seeing the Bighorn or Little Horn Mountains for the first time, and not being able to wrap my brain around it. And there's one shot where she's, where they're going, and you could see where she, you could see the vastness of the desert, and you see the row of mountains in the back. I mean, they really captured the wonder of what it's like to see these things. So I'm giving it a very strong 1.
Yes, I agree with you, but I just want to say that even though there are some impressive shots here, I actually don't think it does as good of a job of capturing what those vistas actually look like, because they're unbelievable to see in person.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
they do a
absolutely.
fair job, but not even do what the reality is. So I'm giving it a 1 overall.
But I think that's also, one of the things that we're neglecting is they're actually there a lot of times in the off season, right? So they're in these places when they're not in their peak. You might want to see some of these places when there's snow, but it is a very saturated movie where, like, if it was the time when people want to go there, there would be people there. And instead they're there when there isn't anybody there. So, that's just, so on the landscape side, I thought it was impressive. I was actually early on in the movie, I'm like, why is this movie being released in IMAX? And then you're like, okay, here come the Vista shots. You understand it. It's the travelogue. I don't know how those Frances McDormand close-ups do on, a huge giant screen. I'm sure they're fine, but it would be, I think it would be a little much at that point. Actually, I'm actually pretty happy. I watched it on my TV and was able to, put it in its own context. I really loved, though, some of the touring scenes. The segment I don't think we mentioned much was, I forgot the name of the area. It was like Drywall or wherever he took her, where he met her, and they worked in the restaurant, and he's making those donuts. Wall drug. Yeah, I want to eat those donuts. The dinosaur, which is like, isn't that from Big Top? Isn't that from Pee Wee? Didn't they have that dinosaur? Didn't he visit that on his road trip? I want to say that big dinosaur, but
that's South Dakota.
Yeah,
also.
so
It's like,
yeah. So I think that I said, I'm going to give my own trip. I went to Fargo one time, and I took, I'll give you a really good story, Chris, and it is not that story. But my sister lived in Minneapolis for a year or two, and we did a road trip to Fargo. I was like, I want to go to Fargo. She's like, okay. And so we get there, and we run into the Paul Bunyan ox from the Fargo movie, and I am excited. I'm thinking of this because of the dinosaur. And she's taking pictures of me in this place, and I look at her like, do you know why I want to go to Fargo? She's like, I have no idea. So she's like, I had no idea. That's my favorite movie. She had no idea where Fargo was. She had no idea. She just came along. And then we found the Brainerd sign, and I pretended to be digging up, but it wasn't snow time. So I was trying to dig up right by the Brainerd sign and do the Fargo move. So that's my travel log. It's not as sad, or it's more of a happy moment for me. So I'm sorry, Chris, maybe, but oh, you like the traveling part.
I was gonna say it's not sad. I don't see there's any sadness in it.
No, this was but the other thing I would say, there's just little touches there. I really like the part where they talk about they're giving you the carnivore option, the vegan option. I respect that as a vegetarian. I like some of the short phrasing. I think there was a lot of like insider talk that they tried to not be like over explain, but still give you the vibe that it's lived in. The whole movie, I think learns from that. So, overall, I think, this is definitely, a good piece of style. This is like a good poet laureate of the Vagabonds type movie. And, it's exemplified by the style. It just enhances it. So, yeah, I'm giving it a 1.
I do have one thing on my travels, though. You do come across people really into rocks.
Yep.
And rocks are cool. Not that into it, and there are people who are really into it. I think they captured that very well.
Yeah. I was just gonna say I agree with you guys. I really love the style, Chris. I really enjoyed the music of this, and it jumped out at me in a lot of points where a lot of movies recently have not. And like you said, it was understated. I'm not sure that it was. I thought it was pretty obvious, and I really loved the way that it was used in this film. Obviously, the landscapes are fucking beautiful in this movie. You can see if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see behind me. It's like it's a lot of this in terms of like what's going on in the movie. Like there's a lot of these like great shots of just open expanses, American open spaces, which is really cool to see. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is when we're not doing these like big landscape shots, there's a lot of like really deft, I think, character work with the camera. It feels almost like a lot of these, especially Frances McDormand is, or Fern, is dancing with the camera at a lot of points. Like the camera moves a lot, but it never feels like jerky. It always feels like kind of smooth. And I really enjoyed that. Even when you have these, like, even when you have long shots on characters, there's some movement to it. It's not like this like steady cam type of shot, but it never feels out of place or weird. And it can easily when you're doing like jerky camera type of stuff. So like I really like what this movie does with that, and I'm going to give style a 1 for those reasons, and a lot of the ones that you guys said.
Did you mention the music? Are we just talking about the score? Because I think there was a very good, very recurring, performance aspect to this movie. There's the bars that they go to that have a couple, and they have those. There was a cover of like, then they read like On the Road Again. It's like vagabonding again. Yeah, Willie Nelson song. And then I think, unless I was mistaken, I'm pretty sure that first like instrumental that or some kind of score hits. It sounded like the first half of Behind Blue Eyes by
it did, like,
right. So I was thinking like Limp Bizkit. Are we covering that in the middle of this movie maybe? Or
I noticed that, and
then
it went off of that. I think like I don't know if it actually was, but like the first couple of notes felt like Behind Blue Eyes, and then
I don't so I think there's actually a musicality that's something you can do, even no matter what. You can enjoy camaraderie through performance, and through weren't they like lighting the little like cardboard bus on fire, and there's things around the fire. It's another part of the kind of kumbaya, the good parts of camping, right? I guess, which
right.
I guess for some people. So
What
Return to tribalism.
I was gonna say, what I meant by stated, Steve-O, is a lot of solo guitar, solo piano. It was just like they kept it. When I meant it
It
was
wasn't
there.
like big band or like
It wasn't like, yeah, they didn't feel the
orchestra.
need to
Yeah.
have some kind of audio landscape to go along with the visuals. They had the right amount at the right time. And Joe, you're absolutely right. A lot of it was the performance elements of it, which I loved and appreciated.
Gotcha.
All right, Joe, do you recommend Nomadland?
Yeah, I think I would recommend it to if you're interested in this. I don't think it's not going to be an uplifter. It's not going to be a hot date movie. It's a frame of mind movie, and I would put this in when you're in more of the when you're in the right state of mind. Because if you're in the wrong state of mind to watch this movie, I don't think it will help, and I don't think you will enjoy it. But if you're in the looking to kind of feel empathetic and kind of reconnect a little bit, this is a good choice. So give it a 1.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend this to everybody, but I would recommend it to enough people where I can feel comfortable giving it a 1 for recommend. I think that this movie, you're right, like definitely don't use this as a date movie. This is kind of or do whatever, Ian. Sorry to make you
This is the kind of mood I want my dates to be in.
yeah, if you don't like this movie, we're done. But it's not an uplifting movie by any means, but it is very I don't know, like very real, like whatever, like it just tells a story without like giving you a lot of like glitz and glam that you can get from a lot of movies, and like it tells you the story and tries to strip it down to its component parts as much as possible, and I really appreciate that about this. And I say go, whoever you are, go watch it by yourself in a dark room and let the tears flow, as Chris says.
This is a perfect date movie because you can sit back, smoke cigarettes, have existential crises about the nature of the world, and then
He secretly wishes he was French.
Yeah,
and enjoy the passion or rejection of the dark existentialism.
maybe watch it on a tube TV, like in your little cabin, like in your back of your van, and then it's a perfect date movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually really enjoy it. I think it's a beautiful film, and I think it is. Again, there are people out there going to hate this, but Steve, your point that there are more people I'd recommend it to than not. So I'm giving it a 1.
We finished watching this just before 2:30 this afternoon. I've already recommended it to 3 people, so it's definitely getting a recommendation. It's a beautiful film. I loved it. And Joe, to your point, one of the things I always wanted to do when I was a kid was go to Devil's Mountain or Devil's Monument in Wyoming. Hit that when the sun was coming up. And it's amazing how you can be awe-inspired by something you've always wanted to see and then realize it's a little smaller than Spielberg made it look with the mothership behind it. But these things don't disappoint. And I love this movie to death, and I've already recommended it. So,
or you can be driving from Vegas to LA, see a broken down bus in the middle of Death Valley, and in the middle of everyone walking back to civilization in the hot sun. And that is my experiences in the West.
I have a question, more like if it's an overall question, because this movie has definitely been a super hype if you have any interest in like awards type season. And I don't know I can see that being the backlash, because this movie, it seemed like it was, I don't know, Lawrence of Arabia, right? I mean, sometimes, and I think it's contextually within this year, this is an Oscar filmy in a normal year, and because it's the only super Oscar-y type film almost coming out this year, it's getting that hype. So I would just beware that, like, try to give this movie its own experience and don't go into it thinking you're seeing the greatest movie of the 21st century.
I would say this is probably I'd have to think about it more because I just saw it today, but like between my 2nd and 4th favorite movie this year so far. And I still haven't seen Minari yet, which we're getting to next week, I believe. And that one's supposed to be great. So we'll see what happens. But, I think that there is at least 2 movies I've seen this year that are, like, in my mind, just better than this one, easily. And this is a great movie, I think, but I'm not going to make it my best picture. We'll see.
So Palm Springs and
Palm Springs and Palm Springs. The second time I watched it.
What's that, Ian?
I did enjoy Palm Springs.
Oh, I did too. I was just kind of half joking. Barb, and whatever go to Mira Vista or whatever. I was asked. To
Holy shit.
So, Del Mar, Bob and Mar, down to Del Mar. So I don't know. I just wanted to point that out because I do think if you're listening, I mean, if you got all the way here, obviously you probably watched the movie or you've gotten it ruined for you. But to me, that a lot of times influences movies like this, especially when they've had months and months of kind of build up, and then they got an extra 2 months because this went into February, and it's getting this kind of weird release for everybody on Hulu. That's a newer type thing, and it's definitely contextually important because if you try to do it that way, a lot of times these movies end up not surprising you, right? And that's all.
Well, actually, our podcast is perfect for people who don't want to watch a film, but want to know everything about the film so they can discuss it with their friends.
And opinions you may or may not want to hear.
Yeah.
We're an open book.
Travelogue.
That's certainly true.
For better or worse, we're an open book. So
3 8s and a 9. A 9 was Chris. The 8s were that narrative. Chris, you loved it. Okay, but overall antagonist because for varying reasons, but she's our antagonist. But overall gives us an 8.25. So I think that's pretty good. It's a decent film. Again, I was hearing that this was going to be the sweep the Oscars as the best picture. I don't agree, but anyway, that's that. I'm Jonathan Eametzer, here with Christopher Morgan.
On the road again.
Joe Story.
I was going to say on the road again.
And I'm going to get on the road again. See you guys later.
I wish. It's because it's been snowing here for like 3 months straight.
You can't leave your driveway.
Oh my God.
What if Willie Nelson showed up and actually was performing that scene? Like, would that have ruined the whole thing, or would that have just been like the taste of resistance?
This turns into the end of Beer Fest.
Nomad Fest.
Yeah.
And with that, have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.
Or mods?